And as Marvin said, today we'll pull together some of the threads that we've unplucked over the last, well, actually it's almost a year. By way of introduction, this is my canned background, petroleum engineer or petrophysicist. I answer to both. All of these dates are actually a year out of date, so add another one to those. So a couple of years with SolarSense, 3 years, 4 years since retired from BP. Yeah, and always worked in mature fields, preferred mature fields. Never got excited about the exploration stuff. Got far more interested in extracting the hydrocarbons efficiently from the ground and making sure the wells were in a healthy, happy and fit state. Hence why the cased hole and displacement recovery and latterly the fibre optic type activities. And that's actually quite an old photograph now, so I think I've aged a little bit since then. And the usual caveat about yeah, this is a live demo, so if there are any glitches with Microsoft patches or flaky internet connections, or I'm doing this from my COVID home, and this is my dining room table, and so if there's any family noises going on in the background, you'll have to excuse those. That's the times that we live in. As Marvin said, we did 4 prior webinars. The first one, that was the 4th of December actually, last year. We just introduced different components of a fibre system, and we tried to go through how flexible it is to deploy fibre these days, that you've got a lot of choice in terms of deployment mechanisms. There's lots of choice in terms of the interrogation units and acquisition boxes, and then finally the interpretation and processing. There's quite a few things that are available on the market now. So the example that we're going to go through and have used in the past, all of this data was acquired on slickline. So this was fibre-enabled slickline run off a conventional slickline unit with conventional slickline crew and pressure control equipment. So it makes it very simple, easy and flexible to use. There was a memory sensor package at the end of the fibre, where the operator ran a gamma CCL pressure and temperature gauge to give them that additional information. And the way this particular survey was acquired, we ran into the bottom of the well and did a baseline survey for an hour or so before starting to manipulate the well. The problem with the well was a communication between the tubing and annulus, and they needed to fix that before they could restore production back to the well. And it was actually costing them about 2,000 barrels a day of deferred production. So it's not an insignificant amount for them. So that's by way of background in terms of the examples that we'll see today, because I keep forgetting that if you've just dipped into this particular webinar, you won't have the context of the previous ones, and so I do need to explain a little bit and set the scene. The second webinar that we did was in February, and that was fibre versus wireline, and that's simply compare and contrast against the two measurement types. And it's not that wireline is better or worse than fibre or vice versa. They actually have unique things that each bring to the table, and it's true to say that if we ran a distributed fibre survey in a well, it gives us a really good overall view of what's going on in that well prior to any targeted sensor package at the bottom of the string. And so it's almost like a pre-survey where I can stand back, look at the well as a whole, manipulate the well at the surface and deliberately induce changes, and then use that information to have a very targeted, precise now that may be in the same run in the well or a subsequent run where we can run a much more sophisticated acoustic package or some of these point measuring tools, etc., and know what we're looking for and how we should set that up. So it makes the whole gathering of data a lot more efficient in terms of a targeted response and knowing what will work and what won't work with a deal of confidence. The third webinar we did in April was on distributed temperature data, and we went through how that data can be acquired and imported, and the myriad of different views that we can use to look at how the data is presented, so to try and tease out as much detail as possible from that information. And then the last one that we did was June of this year on DAS data, which is the one that people worry about in terms of data volumes. And we went through how the hot DAS application can be used to decimate the data, do the frequency extraction, and shrink it down to something that is much more manageable in size for shipping around to different decision makers or to the higher end interpretation folks who are maybe not at the well site. So each one of those were little discrete data elements and pieces of the puzzle, and so what I wanted to do now was to start pulling those things together and saying, okay, here's what we're getting from each of these different elements and how we pull them together. So what I want to do now is to move on to the sort of come out of this. Yeah, there we go. And then move on into quick view, which is the application that we use for displaying the data. So here, what I've done is I've taken the same data sets from the same well that we had in the previous webinars, and I'm just displaying, I'm rendering these things. I've got these pre-built views just to A, save a little bit of time, and B, save a little bit of acreage because I'm doing this on a laptop. But we talked about how we can introduce engineering data, so casing points or completion elements. And so again, here we've got some sidewall commandos, gauges, packers, safety valves, and hangers. And we can add to that however we wish. And likewise, we've got the other static elements of the casing shoes. And then there's some geological information to formation tops. All of this can be set up before we move out to the rig site. So there's no reason why we couldn't have all of this information already prepped and loaded up as we go to the well site, before we go to the well site. And so as the data comes in, whether it's memory data, DTS or DAS data, we're just laying that alongside this other information that we already know about the well. Now, the same can be said about open hole data. So we've got the ability to pull in log data if we wish. And so again, there's no reason why I couldn't load up a reference gamma ray, for instance, if that's the primary depth reference, or a prior log from some historic run in the well, or even the open hole data, the either the calculated curves, then the porosity, permeability, saturation type information, or the open hole data, the density, neutron, gamma from the open hole logs. All of it, I'm quite a strong advocate of, we run a fiber survey, and the information that's telling us is being impacted by quite a number of different things. Certainly the completion and the casing, but also things like the cement and the formation. And so if I've got more information at my disposal when I come to look at and interpret these images that we're generating from DTS and from DAS, then I can make more sense of it if it's all in one package and I'm just looking at it from different angles. So this particular data set, these are the static elements that we've gleaned. We ran a memory gamma CCL pressure temperature, and so this is one particular run from can't remember if it's the run in hole. Actually, it's probably the run in hole data, where we can see there's clearly on the pressure data a liquid interface in the tubing, and we've got a thermal profile that we can look at. The gamma ray data itself, there's some gamma spikes on there that may warrant further attention. I mean, again, it's quite common that we would have points of either fluid entry or exit from the well if we're looking for leaks. Then we may see some increased gamma activity as radioactive salts are deposited. So not necessarily scale, although we have seen on these fiber surveys some very active scaling, radioactive scaling show up as well. So we've got this static data and memory data loaded up in this particular view, and there's nothing that particularly jumps out. There's maybe a little bit of that might be associated with the side pocket mandrel, that particular gamma spike, and there's a few other spikes here that we might need to pay attention to. As usual with this particular application, the functionality is there to zoom in and zoom out to give us a better view on stuff and more detail. So that's my static data and my memory data. The distributed temperature data, here's the distributed temperature data that we've acquired, and again we've seen that this particular well does have some interesting features, but to orientate ourselves in terms of different events, what we can do is we can say, well, when did certain things happen in the well? So in this particular column, the DTS column, I want to add in just some time references so I know roughly what's going on. And so at this point here, in fact, let's just move this down to the bottom. At this point here, that's when they started to line up to vent the A annulus. So there was pressure on the A annulus, and so that's when they started the vent process, and it was a gradual opening up of the annulus. It took a little while for it to get going, and then we see this activity. And that's quite a nice partition between a baseline on the left and on the right when the vent process started up. And then this other line here is when they stopped the vent process and started to close it in again. And again, there's a bit of a lag between when the annulus was closed and when we start to see things decaying away. But So certainly with this type of temperature view, we definitely get the impression that there's something happening at the bottom side pocket mandrel, and there's also a feature moving up the way with time in the well, originating down close towards that side pocket mandrel, and then further up we've got quite an area of activity above in the upper half of the well in terms of temperature. So when we look at that in the context of the casing, completion and formations, we know there's permeable intervals in roughly this mid part of the well. We've got some casing shoes, and so clearly above that 13 3/8" casing shoe there's activity going on. And then likewise, round about safety valve level, or some of these more recent sediments, there's activity. The reason why we've got this big red carpet at the top is because they're venting the annulus. What was a nice cold 4 degrees C seawater has warmed up just simply by the movement of fluids up through the water column. That's why this just gets washed out and shows as red. And then just as a reminder, we've got the ability to very quickly flip between one view and the other. This is the relative difference plot from a nominated baseline, but if you wanted to have a look at the absolute data, move this out of the way, that's what it looks like. So yeah, in absolute terms, there's not a huge difference here. So if you just looked at the raw data, you wouldn't see anything in that data set. But when you start looking at relative difference, it really starts to jump out. And then another view would be a successive time difference between each individual temperature increment, and you get a lot more clarity in terms of some of these features that are popping out here and up in the upper overburden. So it's really nice being able to take the static data, show it alongside that particular view, and then again we can do exactly the same sort of a thing with the DAS data. And so here's the DAS data over a shorter time period. I hasten to add, because there's a heck of a lot of detail on the DAS. And again, we can see a lot of features going on in this well. On that note, what I've done is I've copied the DAS data into this same data set here. Just so that you've got a better view of the wider picture. And again, I'm doing this just to save acreage on my laptop. If I had a dual monitor, I'd be able to have this on one screen and the rest on another. But so we've got 1, 2, 3 discrete data sets where we've closed off the file, started a new file, just so that it's in manageable chunks. And that, again, that's for convenience. We see this feature moving up the well, and this is quite a distinct feature, and then it tails off a little bit, and then we get this big red wedge of data here. You have high amplitude at a specific frequency, and what that turns out to be is, if you recall the static data, we had a fluid interface in the tubing which was at about this sort of level, and when we started the annular bleed, then we pulled fluids into that annular space and increased the liquid level in the annulus, and there was only a slight reduction in the tubing side fluid interface. And so what we're seeing is that thickness there, that distance there, is the level that the liquid in the annular space has reached, even though the tubing side is where the slick line has been deployed. And so there's a difference in the acoustic properties of down at this deeper sort of level where both tubing and annulus contain liquid. And then here we've got an increasing liquid level in the annulus, and then up at this sort of level, both annulus and tubing have gas in them. And so that's the change that we're seeing. And we wondered about this effect when we first acquired the data, but what you have to remember is that we've got a downhole gauge on the end of the fibre that is giving us pressure. And we also had a note during the job of the tubing and annular pressures, and we knew the fluid gradients involved. And these depths tie in exactly with what you would see on the hydrostatic change in the liquid levels in the annulus. And so effectively what that gives us is an annular volume that over the duration of that survey that liquid has moved up, and an effective leak rate through that side pocket mandrel into that annular space. So that was kind of nice to that those elements all tied in quite nicely together. So to move back to the composite images, so here we've got our different data forms now. So I want to display all this in a single frame, a single page. So here's my temperature data, here's my acoustic data, I've got my completion elements in this column, my formation data here, and my gamma CCL. I'll squish this up a little bit because it's not of particular interest. Give more acreage to this stuff. So here we've surmised that feature there is actually caused by the increase in the liquid level in the annulus. So what we want to do is to say, well, let's take a gradient of that and see what sort of rates we get. And so that's kicking in at 0.12 meters per second increase in liquid level for that particular feature, which I mean, again, that tied in with the hydrostatic changes that we saw in the well. And so let's do the same with my DTS data. So the time scales are slightly different on these two plots because there we go. So both of these things, if you remember, the reason why I flipped to the other data set is because we actually have 1, 2, 3 different panels of data because it's such a large amount of DTS or DAS data. Here I've fitted the whole lot into a single plot. But both of them are showing the same slope, and so I'm quite happy that the DTS data matches with the DAS data, which matches with the pressure data from hydrostatics, and they're all saying the same thing. So I'm quite happy that, yes, we are indeed seeing a liquid level increase in the annular space, and that it's coming from the side pocket mandrel 2 depth. That's the ultimate origin of it. And so I'll add in a depth event here. So side pocket mandrel leak. This is when the time they actually started to line up the annulus to vent it. But again, when they're venting, it takes them a little while to line everything up and then crack open the valves fairly slowly to start with, and then at ever increasing rates, but then takes a little while for the temperature to respond to that. And you can see a similar effect here on the DAS data as well. So I'm quite happy that that was the actual source of the problem. And indeed, the operator opted to to swap out that lower side pocket mandrel valve and repressure tested the annulus held pressure, and then restore the well back to production. So really the primary reason for going in was achieved. So we identified the source of the leak, it was fixable, and they fixed it during the same rig up in the well. All of this data was quick enough to allow that to happen during the same rig up. So the operator was fairly happy with that. So that was the main reason why we were in the well. But clearly there's other stuff going on that was not expected. So if we move further up and zoom in a little bit. Yeah. So here, like I just move, get a bit more space. So there is activity going on. You're just above this 13 3/8 inch shoe, or roughly at the shoe level, with these changes in information, and we can see that on both the acoustics and the temperature. And then likewise, there's a geological boundary between more recent soft sediments and this other formation, and again we're seeing activity there, and that wasn't expected. We can, again, the other feature that we've got with this DAS data is that this is one rendering of one frequency band at a specific temporal and spatial resolution, but we can cycle through all of that data to look at different views of the same data set to try and tease out more information and get a clarified view. So this is at quite much higher frequencies. So we're about 1 to 5 kilohertz on this. So there is clearly energy being generated and activity going on in this upper portion, which again, that wasn't recognized, and should the operator wish to either work the well over, sidetrack it, or abandon it, then this is all really useful information for them to help program the abandonment of the well, and certainly gives them a heads up on potential porous and permeable beds and communication between intervals within the well. So quite a nice data set to play with. The other thing, if we zoom in towards the base of the well here, if I blow this up a little bit, clearly we can see that the origin of the fluid movements is from the formation, and so we've got a certain slope. But that's the slope of that line changes as we get to the side pocket mandrel depth, and so the slope of this, in fact, let me just add in a couple of little more gradient lines. So the slope of that is quite different to the slope of that, and that's simply because there is, we're constraining all the fluids within the tubing at up to the side pocket mandrel depth, and so it's moving up at about 0.5, 0.6 meters a second. But then we've got leakage through the side pocket mandrel into the annular space, and so any bubbles or perturbations are slowing down in the tubing side as it migrates from the tubing to the annulus side, and then starts to feed this gross liquid column moving up in the annular space. The fluids were sitting at bubble point pressure, so as soon as we started to bleed the annulus, then we started to evolve associated gas from the oil. So that gives us some quite nice little signals as the two-phase fluids start to move up the well. So that's quite a quick run through this particular data set. The key point here is I want to be in a position to be able to look at DAS and DTS data sets on the same page in conjunction with any open hole data, if I've got the open hole data, or in conjunction with any formation tops and completion elements or casing elements, so that I can start to make sense of some of these features that we're seeing in relation to either the formation, the cement, the casing, or the completion. Remember that we're deliberately trying to induce flow in these wells. And so we always have this baseline period where we see what normal looks like. In this DAS data set, it's this first little portion that's the baseline. There is another file with lots more of it, but it's quite dull. There's nothing much going on. But then, as soon as you've lined up the well to start bleeding off, then there's a bit of a period where they crack open the annular valve a little bit, and you can see that here, and then they gradually open it up more fully, and then we really start things moving a little bit further on in time. But it's nice to see all of the elements coming together well, and all creating a coherent story about what's wrong with the well and how we could fix it. And as usual with all of these fiber type jobs, you always get more information than you would have thought, than you would bargain for. There's always something extra in there that we didn't know about, and that's very true in this well with this these upper features that are going on, and that's true in both the acoustic data and also in the temperature data. So there's clearly things happening in the upper portion of this well that the operator wasn't aware of. So I think I'd kind of like to leave it at that. I mean, the one regret I have in this well is I would really have liked to have had some cement bond data or cement mapping data that we could have pulled in and shown alongside this, because then that would have been a really nice story about what's happening in terms of the presence and quality of cement behind pipe, but that wasn't available to us. But there's no reason why you couldn't include that in if it was available. So a really nice story. So when we come to the punchline for this particular well, the primary fault was identified as the faulty valve, and it was replaced, and the well was successfully restored to production, 2,000 barrels a day-ish. And then there were additional issues identified in the upper porous and permeable beds in the overburden that that certainly provided the operator with valuable insights into future well abandonment issues. So that's really the main things that came out of this particular study. But there's quite a lot more detail in there in terms of the annular hydrostatics and how you can work that out. That again adds a bit more texture and color to the whole story, and then also some of these other features you can track down what they are as well. But alas, that's a fairly lengthy explanation, more than a 40-minute discussion will involve.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Just to mention briefly to everyone regarding a question we had earlier, which was how long did it take you to generate that conclusion that you're showing here, particularly around the psychic pocket mandrel leak? So could you just walk through how the data was acquired, how quickly it was interpreted, and how
yes, I do have my the scars on my back from that one, and it's mainly around the as usual. By the time they actually got onto the well and rigged up, it was well, in fact, you can see from here it was about 6 o'clock in the evening, and then by the time they rigged up the various pipe work to start the bleed process, it was closer to about 9 o'clock at night, and then the survey went on until about 3 in the morning. So here we're just showing from up to 2 in the morning. And so at 2:30 in the morning, the data was ready for transmission. And so literally I had from then until 7:30 in the morning to get a coherent story together for the morning meeting. And so this was offshore in the North Sea, and the data, clearly the DAS data had to be frequency extracted, and again, one of the advantages of taking it in manageable chunks is that you can have a laptop extracting the frequency transforms while you're still acquiring using the interrogation unit. And so as one file was closed off, it went into the processing as the frequency extraction process while they were recording a fresh file, and you only ever lost a few seconds or a few minutes of data. But it just means that it's more efficient in terms of speed of turnaround. So yeah, I probably had 4 or 5 hours to turn this around to a coherent story for the client. And well, I'm 61, so at 61, getting up at 2:30 in the morning and being bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for 7:30 was a bit of a challenge, but hey.
Okay, there was, thanks, Mike. So there's a question that came through. It's not actually posted in the Q&A. So if you do have a question, there's a bottom called Q&A. You can just drop the question there. But in the chat, Jose has said, events seen on the DAS DTS analysis could be identified with wireline PLT measurements. Any particular complementary data obtained with fiber in this particular case? I think you've mentioned some of that, but
yeah, and I think this is where the complementary data. So the data that we acquired with wireline was the memory data, so the gamma CCL pressure temperature. You could argue that, well, you would have achieved the same thing if we'd run a production log, a PLT, for instance, and you could say, well, actually, you might have got the same sort of thing, but you would have had to have been bleeding off and running the survey at the time, and you've no visibility in terms of what's happening over the whole well. That this is why, if you think about the second webinar, the one in February, which is fiber versus wireline, the advantage here is I could have whatever sensor package I choose at the bottom of the slick line. I could have had a much more sophisticated acoustic device, for instance, like GoWell's got the ANT tool that is or alpha tool, is it? I forget, Marvin, which one is it?
Yeah,
Is it
noise
alpha?
tool. That's a noise tool. Yeah.
Yeah, the noise tool. Yeah. So with that, if there's something of interest, then rather than have that tool run over the entire well, I can have a very directed thing. So for instance, this looks like a really interesting feature here. And so there's no reason why you couldn't, if you had a noise tool at the bottom, sort of pull up and then over that short interval, do a much more sophisticated, detailed, targeted survey to find out what was going on there. So we shouldn't think about, oh, I can do it all with wire. These things are all interlinked, and I really like the idea of using fiber as a broad brush survey within that well, and then use the point sensors to give me a much more surgical, targeted view on what's actually going on in that well. But I'm much more informed if I've got this sort of a view to say, okay, here's what I think is happening. Now, in this case, it was clear that they got all the information they wanted from that one survey. But if it was ambiguous, then or if it wasn't clear, then you could potentially run another a much more targeted survey at very specific points in the well to absolutely nail it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, I mean, in this case, obviously there's some fluid flow from below in the well, in the
Yeah,
side tubing and out through the SPM. That's seen in hindsight. Before you went in, you don't know. So in this
yeah,
case, with the slick line unit, the PLT would be memory. You wouldn't get anything until you've completely finished the baseline surveys up and down, and you moved on to some bleed offs and up and down. It's in hindsight, yes, the side pulpit manual was leaking, but it could easily have been a casing leak, and the PLT wouldn't have seen any of that at all. So
yeah, and I kind of like the notion of the simplicity of slickline with the pressure control kit being a lot simpler and the winch being quite simple.
well, definitely. I mean, it would be more expensive to run an E-line unit out
Yeah,
there
yeah,
than
yeah,
the slick
yeah.
line. So there's particularly these offshore jobs, a slick line would be a much more compelling cost.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I don't see any other questions that have come in. If you do have any other questions, let us know. There is an email that in the reminder email that you would have received, you can always flip a reply back to us if you'd like. If you come up with a question or you have any more information you would like to know about fiber, I mean, we're interested also to hear, is there some more of interest around this? Currently our plan is this was the last in our webinar series, but if there's some more topics we'd like to cover, then certainly let us know in the email. If there's no more questions, then thanks, Mike. Appreciate everyone's attention today, and have a rest of the good day.